Hey guys, welcome to BricksDaily Live. So today, episode 6, we're going to go ahead and go through the steps like we normally do. But one of the things I've done a little bit different is I've already set up the scene. And the reason I did that is because I knew this kind of scene was going to take a little bit longer to set up and shoot. So rather than giving you guys just a whole time of watching me set it up, went ahead and did that, so that way we can start shooting a little bit quicker and then jump over to editing. But one of the things I wanted to do today was actually cover, it's kind of in response to a question that was asked from last week's video. And with that is this question that came over from Christopher, where he's talking about he's having a little bit of difficulty photographing his minifigs, and he's getting a glare and reflection. And what I wanted to do is cover what I do to help reduce the effects of that. So one of the problems that we get with Legos, like I'll show this Lego Iron Man here. It's not my favorite Lego Iron Man. But because of the plastic, it really catches the lighting and stuff like that, and it will get a lot of a glare. But one of the things also I wanted to highlight is something that I don't think a lot of people keep in mind when they're shooting, is when you're shooting something that's this tall, a lot of times you're shooting with a light, if say like what I'm using here, just this small LED box. What happens is if you look at this to scale. Now imagine if this light source was to scale for a human. This would be bigger than a car, taller than a 2-story building, and that's a lot of light that is just pumping down on the figures. And what winds up happening is it's just flooding this whole area with a lot of light. And one of the things that I do is you want to make sure that you have the right positioning for the lights. The light fills whatever you're photographing and stuff. So a lot of times we have a tendency of wanting to shoot straight on the subject. So we want to shoot, a lot of times we just feel like we need that light shining right on the figure. But what we want is a nice even light going all the way around. Now, if I turn this on here, if I get up really close, it's going to blow out the sides. You want to find the right distance that's going to cover the subject the way you want it to. And one of the things I'll also do is, let me turn this down just a little bit. You can see the light still coming out. With this one, I have a diffuser plate here that does it does an okay job of diffusing, but you still want to take control of what you're photographing and everything. So what I actually do is, on these shots I have parchment paper, and this is just regular kitchen parchment paper. It's nothing fancy. What I've done is I just fold up a sheet a couple of times so it goes in there, and that helps create more of a soft effect that's going off. And then what I can do is I'll put this back on, and it diffuses it even more. Now if you're shooting with LED boxes and stuff, a lot of times, or how it's set up is you see all the LED stills, or still through the diffuser. When you're shooting something as reflective as a Lego minifigure, those tiny LED lights show up as small dots throughout the image. And so you really want to diffuse the image down, so that way you're not just getting this hard pin lights that come up on the figure. And so, like I said, a lot of times I'll diffuse it. I just keep the paper inside, and that way, as I'm shooting, the light's having to go through there and through this other diffuser. And then still, sometimes that might be a little bit too much, and I want it to diffuse more and go outside or spread more. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just grab a blank piece of paper like this, and I'll set it up So if I turn this on all the way, and then I put this over the front of it, light still comes through, but it's diffused even more. So it really depends on the type of shot that you're going for. And you don't want to overdo it, because however much you diffuse it, you're still going to have to make adjustments in your camera for that diffused light. And so one of the things I want to do in this photo that I'm going to do today is set it up with the diffused, and then I'll take a quick shot where I've taken all the diffusion that I'm using off. And that way you can see just at the same camera settings what it's doing to the image. So let's go ahead. And one of the things that I'm using, or just cover for this, is I'm using the Hulk Buster from the Lego set. It's set 76031. It's actually called the Hulk Buster Smash set. And it's from the Avengers 2 movie. If you remember the movie, it's where the Hulk's under the spell of the Scarlet Witch, and Tony is trying to calm him down, and he has this giant suit come down, that the Iron Man suit with Tony inside of it then goes inside this Hulk Buster. And then they get into a big fight and everything like that, you know, big action scene and all that. So, like I said, I've already gone through and set up the shot. So let's go ahead and switch over to that. We'll take some shots and then we'll come back and start editing. Okay, so as you can see here, I have my set up, and I've gotten everything kind of in place of where it needs to go. Okay, so with this, I'm gonna get my light set back up here, and we'll just kind of go through how I have this all set up. For this shot, I have my top light here, and then I actually have two individual shots. And for this, one of the things that I'm doing is, the main focus is the Hulk Buster that's here. And I have all this debris kind of set up and everything just to help set up the shot. And that's what I didn't want to spend a lot of time having you guys watch as I'm just setting it up. Just getting the big mess and everything, and making sure that the scene is going to fill the frame on the camera. And so I did a lot of looking through the viewfinder, making sure I move pieces in so I don't have a bunch of bare spots. And then the other thing I did was, one thing I don't like too much about this set is the size of the Hulk versus the Hulk Buster. I think it's still a little bit off. I think the Hulk is just a little bit smaller than what he should be, or if you watch the movie, what he was represented as in the movie. And so what I'm doing is I'm bringing the Hulk closer towards the camera, and I'm actually shooting past him to the Hulk Buster. Now in my final shot, what I'm hoping for is the Hulk will be a little bit out of focus, but it's just giving the idea that his presence is there. And with that, it's going to cause a forced perspective where it's going to make him appear a little bit larger than what he would be if I had him standing right next to the Hulk Buster. And so let's go ahead and we'll turn on the lights now. I am a little bit worried that this light here is going to shine right into the camera for you guys, so hopefully it's not going to be too much of a problem. And Go ahead and turn this on. And I'm going to turn on all these. Now all of my lights have the parchment paper diffusing for the diffusing going on right now, including this light up top. Plus I have a regular sheet of paper that's taped up to the light to diffuse it a little bit more. So let me get that turned on. Now, depending on the angle that we're looking at this from, might affect where some of the highlights are happening. So for me right now, just with the naked eye, I'm getting a lot of diffusion going, or hot spots going on right here at the front, right on the curve of this piece. I'm also getting some kind of hot spots here and on these pieces here. Not too much anywhere else, maybe a little bit on the helmet. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take a shot. So I'm still getting some hot spots going on right down here off the feet. So I believe that, and that's one of the things you'll want to do as you're taking the shots, is find out, especially if you're using multiple lights, where that hot spot is coming from. Because you might think it's one light, but it might actually be something else. Now for this, because of the curve of this, I believe the hot spot's being caused by this light over here. So what I want to do is diffuse it just a little bit more. So I'm going to just take a piece of paper and drop it right in front. Nothing fancy. You could also help do this if you had a giant or a large enough softbox to shoot through. I've never really found a need to invest the money in a softbox, because I know I can diffuse the light in other ways just with product that's already around the house and everything. So go ahead and take another shot here. And what I'm doing is shooting with an f-stop that, or aperture that setting that I am happy with, and also controlling the shutter speed. Now, I'm pretty happy with the shot that I have, and you'll see that here in just a moment when we switch over to the computer. But while we're set up here, what I want to do is I'm going to take out all the diffusion causing items, and just go with the lights just as they are, and just to show you what winds up happening if we don't have any kind of diffusion. So give me just a second here. I found parchment paper works pretty good. It causes a nice diffusion, and when you layer it up, and it's still flexible enough. Some people I've heard of using wax paper, but for me, I find it takes more paper than a lot more paper to be able to diffuse the light than just the regular parchment paper. And just regular paper, I think, is just a little bit too much right off the bat. So I try to see what I can do with the parchment paper and just add in the paper, regular paper, if I need to. So as you might be able to see, it's already getting a little bit brighter in the shot. And we're going to take top paper off. So it's a lot brighter. Let me get a shot here. And with this, I'm using the exact same camera settings as what I just did on the last shot, just to show what just diffusing the light can do. Now, if I was actually using this kind of lighting, I would have to go in and really set up, change my camera settings. So all I did here is I changed the shutter speed on this shot, and what we can do is go ahead and we'll jump back over to the computer so we can see what all the difference between these three different shots. Okay, so we're over in Photoshop right now. And let's go ahead and go in and open up our image here. So I know I want to open up these three shots here. And this is going to open it up in Adobe Camera Raw. Now this first one that we're looking at right here is the more diffused shot. This is the one that's using the parchment paper and a couple regular sheets of 8.5 by 11 paper for diffusion. Now, using the exact same camera settings, but taking off all the diffusion, this is what we get. It's much more blown out. If we come in and start looking, you see a lot more blown out sections, like right on the leg here. And those blowouts means they're white. I mean, it's just, you can see, if you look over here at the RGB values right next to the, underneath the histogram, and we roll over that, it's 255, 254, and 255, which means it's white. All information's out of that. There's nothing there to help to get recovered or anything. And then if we change the camera settings to here, and the difference between these, the one that I took was 1/15 of a second with a f4.5 setting with an ISO of 200. And this last one is an f4.5 with 1/62 and the ISO is at 200. And the problem that we're getting is we're still getting some blowout. So even adjusting the camera settings to try and get it isn't going to be as easy. It's not going to give us the effect that we want. And so here, if we go back over and we look back at the leg, it's blurry. Still, it's out of that part of the leg's out of focus because I was focusing on the helmet. But there's still information there. If you look at the RGB values, it's 115, 83, 89. So there's still data in there, and we can mess around and try and recover some of that. Now, one area I did get for lack of a better term, a highlight or a spot that, now that I'm seeing it, I probably may have tried to mess around with, was this part on the back leg a little bit. But I think it'll be okay. That's easily taken care of if we want. And the other thing I was trying to watch out for is, because of some of these translucent pieces, like this center chest for where the arc reactor would be, that can get blown out very easily. See, now we have a brighter hot spot there, whereas it's diffused and not seen as much down there, and it's definitely blown out on this shot here. And I also wanted to make sure that the fingers weren't blown out. I purposely used this figure to help illustrate what happens with the lighting and everything like that. So what you want to do is really keep in mind your lighting, where it's setting in the image, where it's actually directed towards. Now, one of the things with this shot that I did is I actually didn't shine the two smaller boxes on the Hulkbuster itself. I actually brought them so that they were focusing more between the Hulk and the Hulkbuster itself, and let the natural fill of the light fill up the scene, and then adjust the camera settings to compensate for what I needed it to be. And I also wanted this image to be a little bit darker because I wanted it to be a little bit more menacing and stuff like that. So I shot it just a little bit more on the darker side because, again, that's what I was going for. So let's go ahead and do some image adjustments here. I'll bring up my exposure and set the contrast. And this area right here with the highlights, if we bring this up and I start adjusting the highlights, if you notice, because that data information is there of what is going on with the helmet is not getting completely blown out. Now if I come back, it can we can lose some information and stuff. So if we just keep that right about in there, and also with the shadows, I can either make it a little bit darker so it all goes back down towards the darks, but you want to shy away from that because it can have the opposite effect of what happens with getting blowout, where there's no data. It just doesn't look like anything's there. It just looks black. So if I bring that back a little bit, what starts happening is, let me zoom in here so you guys can see it. There's a piece that comes down right along the back of the figure. If I pull that shadows all the way down, that piece is completely hidden. So what I want to do is bring that up to where you can see a little bit of definition between the background and that there's a piece there. So if I come back out and I readjust the whites, again, if I go up, it's going to blow out the image, and it just seems to make the whole image brighter. So I can bring that up just a little bit if I want, or if I want it to be a little bit grayer in the whites, I can bring that down. I'm actually going to bring it up just a little bit, not too much though. And with the blacks, I can bring that down. It's kind of like the shadows. I can bring it up just a little bit. And I'm going to bring it in there. Now, I tend to always bring my clarity up just a little bit, and also with the vibrancy. And that's because of the toys, just you kind of want them to have a very vibrant feel. You don't want them to have like a dull look. You don't want it to look like it's an older toy or anything like that. So I'll bring that up, and then I'm going to go over to my sharpening. And I tend to always go into sharpening, and I'm going to sharpen the image. And I'm going to go in with just a little bit of noise reduction. And where that's affecting is right in here. There's some noise going on. So if I bring that up, now if I go ahead and apply these same settings across all of the images, now we have this one here that's diffused. The same shot without any kind of diffusion going on. And then this one is readjusting for in camera, trying to get rid of some of the highlights as much as possible. Now, in general, this is a pretty good shot. I probably wouldn't be too. I probably wouldn't be unhappy with this, but there's still some blowouts going on. And like I said, for me, I kind of wanted this to be a little bit darker of an image, so I wanted to really minimize those blowouts and highlights that happen on the plastic. So if we come in there, and one of the other things I want to look at is sometimes if you, depending on your camera, when you zoom in, sometimes you'll see chromatic aberration, and what happens is you'll see kind of like a bluish or greenish halo. You can readjust that if you want. And also what I'm going to turn on right now, let me zoom out here, is profile correction. What that does is Camera Raw is going to look at the information from the camera, what type of camera it was, what kind of lens, and set a profile on there. So if I turn this on and off, you can see the image slightly gets distorted. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn that on, and we'll come back. And right now I'm going to just readjust the color temperature a little bit. Let's see what happens. See, I don't want it to go too blue, so you don't want it to go too far down. And I think right about there. So I'm changing it to 5600. And I think we're good with that. So we're going to open up just this one image. But again, let me just show you what the difference is between these three shots with the exact same color settings and everything applied to all of them. So diffusion, no diffusion with the same camera settings, and then readjust it in the camera to try and compensate for the hotness of the lights. So let's go ahead and open this up. Okay, so now that we have our image, what we can do is we can look at this and try and figure out what we want to adjust or do to it. I'm going to go in and I'm going to add in some smoke. Kind of fog effect. And we do that by dropping that over, and we'll go in and set that to screen. and that's going to knock out the blacks but leave the lights or the lighter parts of the image. And I need to readjust that. Go in there. Okay. Now up here, it cuts off, so we could either rescale the image or we can just fade that out just a little bit. I'm going to do that by adding in a layer mask and just coming in with the gradient tool, just like that. Okay. Maybe a little bit off of the bottom here. And let's see what else. I'm going to add in some sparks, because if you notice in the image, one of the lights I had the yellow diffuser on there, and so it's coming in off of the right hand side of the image. So I just want to add something in there just to give more of a understanding of why that might happen. So I just brought in that layer. I'm going to set that there. I'm going to shrink this down because we don't need it to be super large or anything. It's just giving an indication of what's kind of going on. And I'm going to manipulate. I don't want it to just be this square image. And we're going to go in and hit screen again. Change the levels. Bring the blacks down just a little bit more. Hit OK. Okay. And let's see. Where do I have this? I think. Okay, yeah, let's add in a little bit of smoke here, but we want to bring this down. Get a nice size brush here. Reduce the spacing. Let's go a little bit larger. Okay. Now for this, we're going to mask out the part. So it's almost like right where his foot steps down on this rubble. So I'm just masking out. And if you remember from some of our other videos, I use the mask tool. That way I can come back in and add stuff. You want to make sure that you can undo easily anything that you might do to an image. You want to be non-destructive with your editing. Now we don't want this to be a perfectly smooth line. It's dust and everything like that. So we kind of want to make sure that it's not cookie cutter. Okay, so we're going to bring the fill back up, and let's see what happens if we adjust the levels on this just a little bit. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Okay, that should work. Now we also want to, because the foot itself is a little bit out of focus, because that wasn't the main part we're focusing on, we don't want all of a sudden to introduce this where it's sharp. So we're going to come up and we're going to apply a Gaussian blur. But we still want to see just enough definition. What's going on. And also I'm going to apply a color overlay. In the color overlay, I'm going to just choose a gray. I'm going to set it to multiply. And what that helps do, let me zoom in so you guys can see it, is without it, we have some parts that are very bright and everything. So we're just going to apply this color overlay a little bit. And one thing extra, so I'm going to add a new layer above this, and holding down the Option or Alt key, I'm going to click. That way it uses the layer below it as a mask. And what I want to do is just get a little bit of red or orange that's kind of coming in. And we'll use a little bit larger of a brush with 0 hardness. It's too large there. And let's see. Because we want to remember that lighting that's coming in off of that side there. Okay. We're going to go up to the mask that I have for the smoke, because I just realized I have the smoke coming across multiple planes and all of a sudden it's coming right in front of the Hulk. So we want to mask that part out. Okay. So that should be good. Now, I'm going to come all the way back down to the main image, and we need to apply the glow effect that happens from Iron Man. So usually whenever I'm shooting Iron Man or Batman, I do this because in the movies they kind of cause this to always take place, where they have glowing eyes and everything like that. So I'm going to just come in here, focus in on the helmet, and create a new layer. And I'm going to call that Eye Glow. And I just want to use a small enough brush and a harder edge. I go a little bit smaller. And I want to paint with white. Now, I wouldn't normally recommend this because it makes it look a little bit odd to all of a sudden just have this completely white area. But it's supposed to represent light. And if you ever photograph directly into light, it's going to get blown out and stuff like that. So we kind of want to mimic that. If we want, we can bring the fill down just a little bit. Give it just a little bit of data in there by having to be a little bit gray. Now I'm going to double click on this and bring up the layer styles. And for this, we're going to do a color, an outer glow. for this, I'm going to go with blue still, and need to bring this way down. And for this, I kind of like using the blue and stuff. It seems like a natural fall off for the white and everything nowadays and stuff. Now, if we want, we can add in just a little bit of noise. It's going to help, especially if there's any kind of banding issues that come up. A lot of times you can get by without adding in any noise, and you definitely don't want to overdo it. Okay, so we'll just bring that right in there. And just a little bit more impact here. So that should work. Now if we turn that off, you can see what that winds up doing for the eyes there. And now we're going to do similar for the arc reactor. Now, a lot of times you have to, this is going to take a little bit more finessing and stuff like that, because you still want the data of the arc reactor showing up. You just want to give the appearance that it's glowing. So we're going to create a new layer. We'll just call that arc. And right now I'm going to go in and paint with white, but also I'm going to set the blend mode right now to overlay. And you'll see what starts happening as I start painting with that. So it just kind of lightens it up. Let me bring down the hardness. And we're going to go in and create an outer glow. And you can see what winds up happening is it just goes outside of that area. Now if I bring this, go into blend mode and change this back to normal, all of a sudden we can't see anything that's going on. So that's why I'm saying it takes a little bit of finesse and everything like that. We can also bring in some of the material from below if we want. And back down here. It's just a matter of painting it in a way that you're happy with. Okay, so I just added in some paint areas here. And what I'm going to do is go in and do a little bit of smudging. Think of it kind of like finger painting. So we just want to get the right glow that works for us. And we're going to add in kind of a lens flare effect coming off of here. So we're going to create a new layer and we're going to fill that with black. Filter, render, lens flare. And the movie prime lens flare is one that I particularly like. Kind of gives that cinema flare. Some people don't like the lens flares and stuff like that, especially people after they watch like the new Star Trek movies or anything like that. But we don't want to overdo it. We just want to give just the effect. It helps add a little bit of depth, I think, to the image. So we're going to adjust the settings just a little bit. About like so. And we need to knock out the black, so we're going to go ahead and set that to screen. And now we can move that right where we want. Just kind of want it right there. And if we want to, we can colorize that so it doesn't bring in any additional colors. So if we hit OK, there's that. And there's a couple other spots in here that would have kind of that same glow. So what we're going to do is go back to the arc layer and see if we can just add them in. But we don't want to overdo it. So if we do that, so it starts to work. I'm going to add a little bit of a darkening gradient up here. Okay, I do want to work just a little bit on this bottom corner here. And let's just bring this over. Let's find okay, so let's add this in, and we're going to change the blend mode to screen. Change settings just a little bit here. And see about changing the smoke just a little bit. Okay. So I think that's working. Let's go ahead back down to the arc layer. We're going to add a little bit of glow on these little rockets that Lego added in on the set. And what I'm going to do is just kind of follow the highlight path. Just want to get the right Okay, I'm going to just select that and we're going to apply a blur. Okay. So that's where we're at right now. Now one thing we can do is using the layer adjustment, or adjustment layers. If we do a color lookup, if you haven't messed with this with Photoshop, sometimes it can help give a more cinematographic look and everything. So these are LUT files and stuff like that. It's used a lot in movies and stuff like that to create a consistent color throughout the movie. Now I have a couple extra ones that I've loaded in from various websites. You can look up and you can find all sorts of them out there. And just as we go through, it applies a different effect to the whole thing. And it applies everything uniformly throughout the whole shot. So if we did this, and actually move that all the way up to the top here. And let's see, let's give you guys a better look here. So I think what we have going on here works. I think with that final color adjustment and everything, it's going to give it more of a cinema style shot and everything. So there we go. Hopefully, Chris, this answers your question on how I approach getting rid of hotspots in the photos. If I'm noticing a lot of hotspots, I will diffuse and just readjust those lights and discover that you can get the setting that you want even if the lights aren't shining directly on the item or the subject. Allow that fill light to fill in the areas and everything, and diffuse if you need to, and then just readjust your camera settings. The more you diffuse the light, you'll have to change some of those camera settings to compensate for the lower amount of light that's coming in on the shot and everything. So hopefully you guys have found this tutorial helpful. I would really appreciate it if you did. Hit the subscribe button below and also the bell icon. That way you're notified when new videos like this come available. And also head over to BricksDaily.com where you can see all of our other stuff that we provide and everything like that, such as our behind the scenes interviews with toy photographers from around the world. if you're interested in being featured in that, head over to Facebook or wherever you want and just send us a notification. Let us know, and we'll reach out to you, find out how we could possibly feature you on BricksDaily.com. You can also reach out to us on Facebook.com/BricksDaily and subscribe to us there. We're also on Instagram under my name. It's Instagram.com/ECWyatt, where you'll see this photo a little bit later today. And let us know in the comments below or anywhere any questions that you have. Did you find this helpful? Do you have suggestions on what you would have done differently? Do you have questions yourself on, maybe you watching this, you realize, oh, I have a question on how that might affect something else. Let us know, and we'll work that into our next videos if we can. And like as usual, hopefully you guys found this helpful, and let us know if you did find this helpful. Post an image and post it with the hashtag BricksDailyChallenge. And that way we can find it and we can see what kind of work that you guys are producing using some of the tips and stuff that we've provided and everything. So I'll just leave you with the shot once more. And like I said, just don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And until we see you next time, I'm Eric, and thanks for watching.